Hello, I'm Al. Welcome to the Guitar Shack.
Okay, so here's another one into stock today. So this is a 2020 Player Series Telecaster. It's in one of my favourite colour combinations, obviously the black with the black guard and the maple neck. It's a typical eBay guitar in that it's pretty dusty and it's not intonated and so on, but it's also not got much wear by the looks of it. There's a bit there. So it's not bad. It just needs to go through my process. Round the back, again, it's nothing too dramatic. Just a bit of unknown stuff which we'll wipe off. Better wash my hands. There's a bit of wear, but it's just a surface scratching on the back with a bit of buckle rash. That'll polish out. But overall, it's in pretty good shape. So the neck looks good. All the lacquer is complete. There's no bubbling, no major scratches or marks or anything. There's a fair amount of wear on the G string, so that'll do a level crown and polish for this one.
So next up for the Telecaster, we're going to strip it right down. So here we have it all stripped down. So 2020 Telecaster, so it's pretty clean inside. The wiring is original and untouched, so that's fine. That can all stay as is. I'll give it a good clean out. Um, the body, you can see the difference in the surface between what sat underneath the pickguard and then all the playware that we've got here just from pickware. So I don't want to mess with the original wiring. There's no point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off the cavities, and then I'm going to give it a good cut and polish and bring the body up to scratch.
So all the electronics worked fine, but just as a bit of preventative maintenance, I give the pots and the switch a good blast with switch cleaner, and then work the controls a lot to make sure that it's absorbed in there and it rubs away any grease and grime that's starting to build up. So this is the body after a bit of degreasing. Um, so what you can see is I've got quite a lot of buckle rash just in the back here. So that's going to be the next thing I'm going to try and tackle. So I'm going to machine polish the whole body. So this is the back. It's still got some scratches. There was a lot in this section from buckle wear, and with the direct light on it and the camera up close, yes, you can still see them. A lot reduced though, and in normal circumstances, you just don't really notice them at all now. So it is better, but it's not going to be perfect. So that's the body done. I'm just going to get the bridge mounted and then the pick guard back on, and then we'll move on to the neck. So here's the body. So just to recap, it's been cleaned, it's been machine polished, it's been waxed, it's had the electronics checked and cleaned with a switch cleaner, and then it's had the bridge disassembled, cleaned, lubricated and put back together. So that's that, and then on to the neck. Okay, so we've got a standard Player Series neck with all the usual markings to November 2020. It's got a skunk stripe, it's got a satin finish on the back. There's no major marks or dings as far as I can see. The back of the headstock is fine, and the tuners all work well. No major damage, well, no damage at all on the front of the headstock front and the fingerboard are glossed. And you can see straight away the issue we've got is fret wear. So we've got this divot, which you can see there on the G string, and that continues all the way down. So I think the previous owner was using a wound G, but either way, you've got a fairly consistent divot all the way down the neck there. So it's going to need a fret level. The good thing is, although it looks quite pronounced, the reality is it's not all that deep. So there's plenty of meat on these frets. So a good level crown and polish will sort that out. And then the other issue with it is just the usual one that you get with Maple Neck Player Series all the time, which is there's a bit of fret sprout. Now, whether it's always been like that and somebody's, it doesn't really bother them, but I'm quite fastidious about fret ends. So this is going to get the ends done and then a full level crown and polish to bring it up to scratch. So the neck's been straightened out, it's had the nut removed, it's had the tuners removed, and now it's been taped up. So this is now ready to go. So that's the frets done, levelled, crowned, and then polished up through various grits to get to this high gloss shine. And then just finishing them off with polishing the edges with 1000 grit and then 2000 grit just to really buff them up nicely and make sure they're smooth. So that's the neck done. We've got, as you can see, we've got all the wear has now been levelled out of the frets. Still got plenty of meat on them. They've been properly crowned and polished. Everything's been cleaned and waxed. So this is now ready to go back on, and then we'll get it strung up and set up. So that's it, strung up, stretched and tuned up. It's new strings, so you've got to stretch it a few times to get it stable, but it's a good base to start with. And then that takes you into the next step, which is setting the neck relief. Now, technically this should be done in a playing position. In reality, I don't find there's a huge amount of difference between doing it there or doing it on the bench. But it might overread by maybe a thou of an inch. So I'm using a gauge to check this, but you can do it just as easily with feeler gauges on the 7th fret, as long as you use the strings as a straight edge. So what we're looking for is basically somewhere between 7,000, which is my preference, and 10,000, which is Fender spec. And what I almost always find with a Fender neck, once I've levelled, crowned and polished it, is that because you straighten it completely, then when you do put it back under string tension, it comes in perfectly. And this one came in showing 8,000 on the gauge, which is where we need to be. So nut height is the next thing to check, and you should do it as part of any setup anyway, but I know that the nut's going to have to be adjusted on this because I've levelled it. So the relationship between the strings and the frets, the top of the frets, has changed. The height has increased from this nut to this fret, to this fret, to this fret, because of the levelling process. So I'm going to have to bring it back down, even if the nut was at the correct height before the levelling. And the simple way to check height is fret it on the 3rd fret so that the string is actually fretted on the 2nd fret, and then see what movement there is to push the string down to touch the top of the 1st fret. And there should be barely any movement, but some movement. You want a tiny gap, but not much. And these are moving quite significantly, so they're going to have to come down. Now you can just measure this with feeler gauges, which is pretty straightforward, or because I do a lot of these, then I measure it with this, which is a nut height gauge. And basically the way it works is it measures the movement on this little plunger. So these slots, these little arches, sit over the fret that way. The plunger sits on top of the string, and as you push it down until the string is fretted, then it measures the difference between the starting point and that. So it's a pretty accurate way of getting the nuts correct. It's not something that you would do unless you're doing a lot of these, but it's a useful tool. So this one, and it's very, very sensitive, as you can see. So if you want to start it at 0 or as close to, and then measure that, and you can see that that's 25, which is a bit high. Moving to the next one, 0 it, and then we're at 28, 0 it, 28, 0 it, 24.5, 23.5, and then on the last one, can't see it, 19.5. So actually that was a little bit low previously, but it should work out okay. So that's, yeah, 18.5. So that low E is cut correctly now. So it was probably sitting a little bit low for where the frets were previously. So that's the next thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to go through a fairly painstaking process of taking each of these nut slots down to the correct level, which should be what I work to: 18 thousandths for the bottom two strings, 16 for the middle, and then 14 for the treble strings. You can go lower than that. I find that's a nice middle ground. It's comfortable, gives you a nice slinky action without you being too close to the edge that you're going to start buzzing on the open strings, which is what you don't want. So that's what I'm going to do next off camera. So that's the nut done. I've adjusted the heights, and then I've shaped the nut itself a little better, so it's more comfortable and the strings don't sit so deeply in it. And then I've polished it, so that's good to go. So next up is setting the action. Now the bridge was reassembled and just very roughly thrown into place with heights and intonation set very approximately. So it'll be interesting to see how far out we are. But if we start, I can see that the low E is far too low. So I'm looking for that to be 1.5 really, and it's more like 1, so that needs to come up. Same but not so badly with the A. D, so there. G is about okay. What I'm trying to get to is in the high E being 1.5. So that's now done. So I've got the action set. Now, one of the questions that you might ask is, why don't I use a radius gauge for that? And the answer is, well, sometimes I do. But I actually find it's just easier and quicker just to do it by setting the two E's and then sort of working my way sequentially across and just not quite eyeballing it, but looking to just get the transition a little bit on each string so that you've got a nice consistent radius. But I find the actual radius gauges themselves are sometimes a bit more trouble than they're worth because they're a bit fiddly. Is it touching? Is it not touching? So that's how I do it, and that's why. So let's get this intonated. So intonation is definitely not a spectator sport because like many aspects of guitar setup, it's a process of small adjustments, check, small adjustments. But essentially what you're doing is adjusting the length of the strings so that they play in tune at the 12th to the same note as they are when they're plucked open. And basically the principle is that these saddles move forward if the fretted note is flatter than the open note, and you move them backwards. I say backwards towards the tail of the guitar. If the fretted note is sharp, and that's all there is to it. So I'm going to walk through that process now and get this intonated. So last but not least, we're going to do the pickup height. So standard Fender specs are a starting point and then you sort of balance it by ear, see what sounds good. But the standard specs are measured from, with the string held down at the last fret, the distance from the top of the pickup to the bottom of the string. And that should be 2mm on the bass side and 1.6mm on the treble side. So it's about 2mm. It needs to come up a little bit. And the only slightly tricky part with the Tele bridge pickup is because it's got 3 screws instead of 2, you've got to raise the middle bit as well as the string that you're actually, or the end that you're actually raising. Let's try that. A bit more. It's no great science to the middle one, you've just got to try and keep it kind of level. Yeah, that's close enough. And then on the treble side it needs to be a little bit higher. That needs to come up. And that needs to come up a smidgen in both cases. Yeah, well, it's 1.5 and a bit more than that one. So that is the full setup. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in my recording gear and then we'll have a listen. So a little bit of a test run here. You can tell straight away that the pickups aren't balanced, so that's why you shouldn't just take the Fender specs for granted.
just raise the neck a little bit, see if that balances it up. Get the right screwdriver would help, of course. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's better. You're looking for, obviously the tonality changes for the pickup, but you're looking for the volume not to really change across them. Obviously the electronics are working okay. So going to play every note, make sure it can play clean. Goes all right. Took those bends, took the G out. So that's what it sounds like, clean, twangy. Bit of drive. So that's through a Fender Mustang modelling amp with a 57 twin model on it and a bit of reverb. Without reverb. With. So that's how it sounds. So that's this one done. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to play this for another day or two and just tweak little bits on the setup as we go. The neck feels really good. The fret job's worked out well. The fret ends are nice. Sounds good. And it's obviously, it's in a lot nicer condition than it started with. So this will be going up on my Reverb shop shortly. So if you are interested, either catch it there or just drop me a line here directly on alan@alansguitarshack.com. And thanks for your time. I'll see you again soon. So this guitar's now up for sale on my Reverb shop. If you just go to reverb.com and search for Alan's Guitar Shack. Alternatively, my website is alansguitarshack.com. Hope to see you there. Thanks a lot.